day the sky fell, Vietnam's battle with Typhoon Bualoi. On the afternoon of September 29th, the skies over central Vietnam turned a deep shade of gray. Winds from the open sea began to howl. Waves towering 3 to 4 meters crashed violently against the coast. On the meteorological radar, the eye of Typhoon Bualoi was spinning fast, and it was heading straight toward land. In just a matter of hours, it intensified dramatically, reaching sustained winds of Category 4 strength. By 7 p.m., the typhoon made landfall between Quang and Quang Nam provinces, unleashing its full power, torrential rain, hurricane-force winds, and the deafening roar of nature at its worst. The storm's fury was immediate. Roofs were torn off like paper, trees snapped in half, and seawalls crumbled under the force of pounding waves. Lightning flashed across a pitch-dark sky as entire neighborhoods disappeared beneath sheets of rain. Then came something even more terrifying. Tornado-like whirlwinds forming inland. In just minutes, they tore through villages, tossing vehicles, ripping off rooftops, and shredding power lines. Streets turned into rivers, rivers into seas, and chaos engulfed everything in sight. Through the night, the rain never stopped. Major rivers like the Vu Gia, Thu Bon, and Tra Cuc overflowed their banks, flooding dozens of communes. In mountain areas, landslides thundered down slopes, burying homes and cutting off all access roads. Many villages were left completely isolated. According to initial reports, dozens of people were killed or went missing, most of them swept away by floods or buried in landslides. Hundreds more were injured as homes collapsed or flying debris struck them during the storm. Rescue efforts began immediately but were severely hindered. Roads were impassable, electricity was down, and communication networks were dead. Transportation came to a standstill. Highways and provincial roads were buried under mud and debris, bridges were washed away, and the country's north-south railway line was forced to suspend service due to flooding and track damage. In many mountainous districts, rescue vehicles couldn't pass. Emergency teams had to deliver supplies using boats and zip lines. The power grid and telecommunications systems were devastated. Thousands of utility poles were downed, hundreds of transformers flooded, and more than 500,000 households were left without electricity for several days. Mobile and internet services collapsed across multiple provinces. Hundreds of BTS towers were damaged or lost power, leaving many areas completely cut off for nearly 48 hours. The blackout and loss of communication severely delayed search and rescue operations. The agricultural sector also suffered catastrophic damage. Over 40,000 hectares of rice and crops were destroyed by flooding, and thousands of hectares of coffee, rubber, and pepper plantations were flattened. Along the coast, over 3,000 fish cages and shrimp farms were wiped out, and hundreds of fishing boats sank or sustained heavy damage. For many coastal families, a lifetime savings disappeared overnight. Infrastructure losses were staggering. Schools, hospitals, and community centers were unroofed or completely destroyed. More than 20,000 houses were damaged, with thousands collapsing entirely. In some low-lying areas, entire neighborhoods vanished. Tens of thousands of residents were forced to evacuate to temporary shelters, struggling with shortages of food, clean water, and medicine. The economic toll was immense. Vietnam's total losses were estimated at between 1.2 and 1.5 billion US dollars. Of this, agriculture and fisheries accounted for roughly $500 million, infrastructure and public facilities about $450 million, and transportation, power, and telecommunications around $300 million. These figures make Bualoi one of the costliest storms to hit Vietnam in the past decade, comparable to Dam Re in 2017 and Molave in 2020. The scale of destruction can be traced to several factors. The typhoon moved at exceptional speed, leaving little time for evacuation or preparation. Central Vietnam's steep terrain and short river systems made it prone to flash floods and landslides. The unexpected formation of tornadoes inland, a rare phenomenon in tropical cyclones, caused sudden, localized devastation. Compounding this, many sea dikes, roads, and power lines were already aging or weakened by previous storms. The ground had been saturated by weeks of rain, dramatically increasing the risk of landslides. In the hours before landfall, the government had already sounded the alarm. More than 200,000 people were evacuated from high-risk coastal and mountainous areas, and thousands of fishing boats were ordered to return to port. Emergency broadcasts, text alerts, and loudspeaker announcements were deployed non-stop. During the storm, soldiers, police, and local militia forces worked through the night, assisting with evacuations and rescue operations under extreme conditions. When the storm finally passed, the Vietnamese government issued an emergency directive for recovery and relief. Thousands of troops and volunteers were deployed to search for missing persons, restore electricity and water, and clear blocked roads. National reserves released rice, medicine, and essential supplies, while hundreds of billions of Vietnamese dong, equivalent to tens of millions of US dollars, were distributed as immediate aid to the hardest-hit provinces. The Ministry of Health dispatched medical teams to prevent disease outbreaks, and the Ministry of Transport worked to reopen key routes. Meanwhile, international organizations, Vietnamese communities abroad, and countless domestic charities joined hands to send relief goods, financial donations, and reconstruction materials. Scenes of volunteers wading through muddy floodwaters to deliver food and blankets to stranded families became powerful symbols of solidarity and compassion. Typhoon Bualoi may have passed, but its lessons remain. It was a brutal reminder of how fragile human life is in the face of nature's fury, and how crucial early warning systems, infrastructure resilience, and community preparedness truly are. Yet even amid destruction, Vietnam's resilience shone through. Quick action, strong leadership, and the unbreakable unity of its people. Bualoi was more than a storm. It was a test of courage, and though it left behind devastation, it also sparked determination, a resolve to rebuild stronger, prepare smarter, and stand together against the storms yet to come.